Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck tech for you, but before that, just a quick reminder to please click like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and every single click counts. And today we're going to be talking about Obeka, Splitter of Seconds. For 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 red, it's a legendary creature, Ogre Warlock 2/5 with Menace, and whenever Obeka, Splitter of Seconds deals combat damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. So as soon as I saw this spoiled, I thought it was incredibly interesting and cool. I've actually been wanting to do an upkeep trigger deck for a while now. There's always been a few cards that I've really enjoyed, such as all the Force cycle, and now I have the perfect commander for that kind of deck. So the way this deck is going to play out, hopefully, is just pack as many upkeep triggers as I can into it and try to get incremental value. Because you get the upkeep triggers after the combat step if you deal damage, that means that you can play cards that normally wouldn't be good enough because you have to wait an entire turn to get the effect. With Obeka, you can get them immediately after playing them, which makes a lot of cards playable that wouldn't otherwise be so. But in any case, the way this deck is going to win is by going a bit of a burn route. A lot of our upkeep effects are effects that are going to damage our opponents, and if we have enough triggers with Obeka, then that's going to mean that we can just kill somebody out of nowhere. We also have a couple of alternate win cons just to make sure that we have an alternate angle of attack, but yeah, this deck looks really sweet, and without further ado, let's jump in. We're starting out with Baleful Force. This is one of the cards that made me want to build this deck. It's obviously really good because we're going to get triggers during everybody's turn, but in this deck where we can get extra upkeeps, it becomes even better. Braid's Conjurer Adept is one of those cards that's usually very risky because your opponents are going to take advantage of it first, but if you manage to connect with Obeka, you're going to get this trigger multiple times before anyone else, and hopefully that should break enough parity to make it worth it. Creeping Bloodsucker is really good. It comes down very early and for very cheap and can start draining our opponents and padding our life total, which is something we definitely need in this deck, seeing as it doesn't have that many defenses. Keen Duelist is one of my favorite cards in Magic. It can absolutely screw us over, and it's definitely going to draw our opponent's cards, but I just couldn't pass up on having all those extra upkeep triggers with this out. Magmatic Force is another card in the Force cycle. This one's quite good as well. Being able to deal 3 damage to anything is very solid. Plog and Nasari is one of those cards that gets so much better when you can get its effect immediately. The effect is incredibly powerful, but usually having to wait for that long, it means that it isn't really as good as it could be. In this deck though, you're going to get multiple triggers of this immediately, which is absolutely huge. Sin Prada is a very powerful effect in the deck. We can target somebody who's low on life, and once we start getting additional upkeep triggers, it's going to be very hard for them to constantly pay their life. This means that we're either going to be drawing extra cards or dealing damage to our opponents, which we're fine with. Sphinx of the Second Sun is obviously fantastic in this deck. It's a nice failsafe for when we don't have Obeka out, and even when we do have her out, it gives us an entire extra beginning phase, which is very nice. Stormfist Crusader is going to deal damage to each player and draw cards. This can be a legit win con if people are getting low, seeing as we have a lot of life gain in the deck, and then it just keeps the game moving forward throughout. Thassa, God of the Sea, works perfectly in this deck for a couple of reasons. First, obviously we have the upkeep trigger, which is Scrying 1, which is very nice, but also it just makes Obeka unblockable for 2 mana, which guarantees that we're going to be able to get damage through with her. The Ninth Doctor also benefits from the unblockability from Thassa, God of the Sea, and this is basically very similar to Obeka, except it's just going to give us 1 extra upkeep. Tidal Force can be used in a bunch of different ways, and they're all very useful. During our opponent's turn, we can tap down their biggest threats so they can't come at us. During our extra upkeeps that we're going to get with Obeka, however, we can just kinda time walk and get an extra turn by untapping all of our tapped lands. Triskaidekaphile is one of our alternate win cons. We're drawing a lot of cards in the deck, so it should be easy to satisfy its requirement. And the fact that it triggers each upkeep is kind of cool too, because we're going to get a lot of chances to trigger it per turn. Twilight Prophet is incredible as a way to close out the game. It's going to cause our opponents to lose a lot of life and gain us a lot of life whilst giving us card advantage. This is incredible. Wildfire Devils can be incredibly powerful in this deck. This is another one of those cards that benefits from getting multiple upkeep triggers, because having only 1 means that you can whiff with this, but if you're getting 3 or 4 per turn, you're almost always going to hit something. Moving on to sorceries, we have Inevitable Betrayal. This is very good if Obeka has 3 power or more, and we have a bunch of ways to buffer in the deck, because then we can basically cast it immediately the turn we play it, so it essentially just becomes bribery. Inspiring Refrain works very well with Obeka. It's going to basically cast every single turn as long as we can connect with her. Profane Tutor again works really well with Obeka. It basically becomes Demonic Tutor. Reality Strobe is the same as Inspiring Refrain. We're going to get to bounce a thing every single turn, which is very, very solid. Rousing Refrain again casts each turn, if we can connect with Obeka, and it's going to give us a lot of mana. Moving on to artifacts, we have Agility Bobblehead. It's a mana rock. We don't usually talk about those, but this one can also make Obeka unblockable, which is actually very nice. Dark Steel Reactor is one of our alternate win cons. Once you start chaining upkeeps with Obeka, this can actually finish the game very quickly. Key to the City is a very powerful card in general, but in this deck, again, making sure that Obeka can connect makes it so much better. Lightning Greaves and Swift Foot Boots are there both to protect Obeka and give her haste. Ring of Evos Isle and Ring of Valkas are both very good in this deck because they put counters on upkeep, which means that they kind of go really nuts with Obeka. The first time you get a counter on, it's going to add to her power, and then when she connects, you're going to get that many extra upkeeps, which means you're going to keep adding to her power. It just snowballs out of control very quickly. Ring of Evos Isle can give Hexproof as well, and Valkas can give haste, which are both abilities that we really want on Obeka. Midnight Clock and Replicating Ring are both very good in the deck because they get counters on them during the upkeep, which means that they can get to their very powerful abilities very quickly. Portal to Phyrexia is going to come in, wipe a lot of creatures from our opponents, and then every upkeep we get to reanimate a creature from a graveyard. That's going to be very good in this deck. Finally, Venser's Journal is really solid because it's going to provide us such a nice life buffer. It's going to make it very difficult for our opponents to kill us. For enchantments, we have As Foretold, which is going to get counters on it very quickly, meaning we can dump bigger and bigger things onto the battlefield each turn. Descent into Avernus is a very quick way for us to finish off the game. We should usually have more life than our opponents, so this should kill them very quickly. It can be a straight up one-off kill. If we have Obeka with enough power on board, we can just swing with her, get a bunch of upkeeps, and just deal like 40 damage to everybody. Dreadhorde Invasion is going to provide us a nice little blocker that keeps getting bigger and bigger, and then can eventually gain us some life when it attacks. Extravagant Replication is a bit of a meme, but you can go absolutely insane with this once you start making copies of other things. Feast on the Fallen is a card that I've been trying to find a place for a long time. It's going to be very good in this deck because it can grow Obeka very quickly. Ill-Gotten Inheritance is another way to pad our life total and hopefully finish off the game. Mind Unbound gets counters on it extremely quickly in this deck, which means we're going to draw a ton of cards, giving us a lot of options for how to progress. Palace Siege is mostly there just for the Dragons mode as another way to finish off the game, but we can definitely go cons if we need to. Paradox Haze gives us another extra upkeep every turn. Protection Racket is going to eventually become insurmountable for our opponents. They're going to either have to let us draw a bunch of cards or going to start to take a ton of damage. Search for a Scanter gives us very nice card selection and then eventually flips into something that can start digging very deep into our deck for stuff. Tavern Brawler fits perfectly in this deck. We're going to exile stuff from the top of our library and it's going to buff Obeka's power, which is exactly what we want. Thopter's Spy Network is going to draw us quite a few cards whilst creating an absolute army of 1/1 flyers. And Virtue of Persistence is incredibly good in this deck because we're going to get to reanimate stuff every upkeep, and then also it kind of doubles up as a nice removal early on. Finally, for lands, we have Access Tunnel, which works very well with Obeka before she's been pumped too much. Inventor's Fair is going to gain us a lot of life because it triggers every upkeep. It also allows us to search up all sorts of things in this deck, including win cons in Dark Steel Reactor. Minas Mogul Dark Fortress is a card that I've been very impressed with lately. I think people are sleeping on this one. It's so good in this deck because Obeka is basically going to become unblockable forever once you put a shadow counter on it. Rogue's Passage is another way to make Obeka unblockable. Shizo Death Storehouse is going to make her mostly unblockable. And the Black Gate is the worst out of the bunch because it doesn't work if we have the highest life total, but when we don't, it's yet another way to make her unblockable. So there you have it. That has been our Obeka Splitter of Seconds deck tech. I'm really excited to put this one together. This is one that I'm going to be 100% building myself. But what do you think? Are there any cards do you think I missed? Any things you think I shouldn't have included? Let me know in the comments section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.